I hereby call this meeting to order at 8:31 p.m. Secretary Strauss, can you please call roll?
President Moore. Here. Vice President Jacob.
Here.
Pierre Severson. Treasurer Lorenz.
Here.
Assistant Treasurer Doyle.
Here.
Senator Dollison. Here. Senator Lynn. Senator Walden. Senator Hernandez Garrity.
Here.
Senator Hertzberg.
Here.
Senator Wilcoxon. Here. Senator Maldonado. Here. Senator Godham.
Here.
Senator Barons. Here. Senator Frizo. Here. Senator Westfall. Here. Senator Abraham. Here. Senator Burns.
Here.
Senator Roth.
Here.
Senator Bella.
Here.
Senator Lomoff. Senator Williamson. Here. Senator Shin.
Here.
Senator Lavender.
Here.
Senator Battery. Senator Smith.
Here.
Senator Howard. Here. Senator Martin. Senator Martin. Here. Roll call.
Thank you, Secretary Strauss. All right, before we move into the agenda, I'd like to welcome Vice President for Enrollment, Marketing, and Communications, Brian O'Rourke. So everybody give him a warm welcome.
Thanks. Thank you very much. I appreciate the invite. I'm going to pop the microphone if you don't mind, mostly because podiums make me nervous. I've been presenting for most of my adult life, and I still don't like this area of the podium. I'm going to keep it really casual. My name is Brian. I'm the VP for Enrollment, Marketing, and Communications. I've been with Valpo now about 5 months. I appreciate, thank you very much for the invitation to come say hello. I work for President Padilla on his administration. As I said, I've been with the university now only a few months' time. I apologize. Please don't find me rude or casual for leaving my jacket on. I see a few students work in my office. My family and I just relocated from California. I am perpetually cold. I am freezing all the time, and I get it. It's not even winter yet, but I'm like clinging to my jacket. So I have three sort of core roles with the institution that I just want to talk about a little bit. Really throw out a couple of thoughts in terms of where I'd love some help and participation from you all and student government, and then of course just throw open any questions or comments or thoughts or feedback that you all have for either me or President Padilla or the administration that I can certainly bring back to that group on your behalf. So sort of the three core functions of what I do here at the university. The first is I oversee admissions and financial aid. So working primarily basically with students from the point at which they think Valpo might be for them, all the way through basically that point of enrollment and then getting their financial aid award to students and all that good stuff. That's a big part. That's sort of a core function of what I do. Enrollment, it encompasses sort of a lot of different facets to it. And then part of that event is also marketing and communication. So pushing out that marketing message, working with the videos that you all see online all the time, or commercials, things like that. I mean, here's on the radio, you see our billboards, all that good stuff. That sort of is all through my office. And then a lot of the communications that you see from internally from the university comes from our office as well. And then the last part of my job, which is probably most pertinent to you all, is retention. So the hardest thing that a university does is try and improve the percentage of first-year students who come back for their second year and the percentage of freshmen who ultimately graduate from the university. I have my master's in this stuff, so I can get pretty deep into it, but I'll keep it top level. Like 50 years ago, all of a sudden, retention became a big deal. Like it was literally like the 1980s when somebody was like, wait a minute, we should really care more about how many of our students are graduating. So it's been an area of focus of colleges and universities for a really long time, but the hardest part, hardest thing that can happen in an institution is to improve that number in a meaningful way. So to actually get more of your students to persist to graduation is one of the hardest things you can do at an institution. And that falls into my area as well. And I can tell you that nationally, the institutions that have been able to do it really well are the institutions where there is a strong relationship between the administration and this group and the student government. Open dialogue, open discussions, feedback loops, really meaningful and honest discussion and exchange of ideas and exchange of information between the university itself, the administration, and student government is 10 times out of 10 the most effective way to move the needle. It's about finding ways for us to have a discussion about what do students love about Valpo? What are students frustrated with about Valpo? I ask, we have something like 50 tour guides in our office, our AIAs. I go on tours all the time. One of the questions I always ask is, be honest with me. Tell me what you don't like about this place. Tell me what you change about this place. And I don't ever make a promise or a commitment that I promise we can change it. I can't promise that we can fix it. What I can promise is we can have a discussion about it. Right? We talk all the time in my office about not every idea is an actionable idea, but every idea is worth a discussion. Every idea is worth a consideration of, can we say yes? Can we get to yes how before we immediately say no? Right? And so it's about creating a discussion, creating a dialogue where we talk a lot about, what could we be doing better? What are we doing great that we didn't talk about differently? What are things that, little things we can fix? It sort of falls into two categories, right? In terms of how I sort of see the student experience from my lens. One is what I call the business of doing college, right? It's all that stuff that exists in the background that's like just the stuff you have to do every day in terms of being here. In terms of just staying enrolled, things like, processing paperwork, registering for classes, making sure you finalize your financial aid, all that stuff that just sort of exists in the background, right? That's sort of the business of being here. And then the other part is the student experience. And my job is to look at both parts equally and continue a discussion with you all to understand, again, what could we be doing better on both sides? What can we be doing better in terms of the college experience? What can we do better in terms of that business of doing college and the paperwork and all the administrative stuff that you all have to do here? I love it here. Let me say that. I've been here 5 months. I love it here. This is an amazing institution. I've been doing higher ed work for the last 25 years. Basically, I graduated and went right to work for a college, and I've been doing it ever since. This is an amazing place. It's an amazing campus. We have just amazing staff and amazing faculty. My favorite part about this institution is you all. I just met a young man downstairs. I was watching the Bears game, and this young man, Abraham, was doing something with popcorn and student organizations. It was sort of a low turnout, so we just started chatting. Just a really interesting guy. He's doing environmental engineering. He's from Iowa. We were chatting for like half an hour. We're like BFFs. It's awesome. I love this place because of you all. So I want as much opportunity as we can to respond to your needs and your wants to make this a better place, because I think it's awesome. But let's be honest, they pay me to show up every day, right? We're here for you all. And so that's why we need to establish an honest loop and an honest discussion about what it's going to take for this place to not just be some place that you love for 4 years, but that you walk around for the rest of your life just proud that you were here. Because that's our goal, right? We don't want you to start. We want you to explore Valpo, come to Valpo, graduate, go on and do amazing things, and every now and then check back with us and say, this was awesome. I really appreciate everything for that 4 years. So with that, that's honestly all I really wanted to say and check in on. Questions, thoughts, comments you have for me about anything I said or anything you want to know about this place? I probably don't know as much as you will. Yeah.
There have been a lot of talk about an enrollment deficit in a lot of colleges coming in the next 5 or so years. How do you have any plans how to combat that in future years?
That is an excellent question. So the question, 2 parts. One was about the enrollment cliff, the enrollment challenge, the enrollment declines naturally, and then what my plan is. Okay, so the answer is yes. So let me establish a couple things up front, okay, like just sort of as the baseline. There are a variety of mechanisms, and we actually just talked about a bunch publicly, the administration did last week, like basically benchmarks, metrics, whatever you want to call it, that talk about sort of a university and their health and their sustainability. Valpo's not going anywhere. We have a monster endowment. We are well established. We've been here since 1859. Valpo isn't a school that's going anywhere. So we need to sort of establish that, sort of right out of the gate. We obviously have seen enrollment decline, like most institutions in the country. Actually, in Indiana, I just saw a new report that came out about a month ago. We've seen a decline of 5% in the state over the last 5 years of college enrollment, and every sort of looking across all institutions in Indiana. So there are 3 states in the country where college enrollment is going up: California, Florida, and Texas. Everywhere else it's going down because there just aren't enough people graduating from high school anymore. So it's a very different world than it was even 10 years ago in terms of college enrollment. So yeah, you have to have a very strategic plan to address that. So I have sort of some core pillars that I brought to the institution. I spent several months sort of listening and seeing where opportunities were. Some core ones. We got to tell our story better. Our story is you all, and our story is the faculty. And part of my job is to figure out how we get that message out into the world better. So I will say to that effect, if a faculty or staff member taps you and says, hey, you have a great story about your major or something really cool you're doing on campus, can you participate in an interview to tell that story? Help me out, do it. If you're tapped by a friend or someone in your hall that says, hey, we need help doing overnight visits in March because we got 200 kids coming to campus and we need you all to host them, say yes. Okay, so that's the first one. We got to tell our story better. Another component of it, we have to help students understand their financial aid awards. I imagine that several of you are in this room, at least in part, because we provided a pretty reasonable merit scholarship and possibly even some need-based aid to help you enroll. And we know that's why a lot of students do enroll in Valpo. We also know there's a whole lot of students that aren't enrolling in Valpo because they don't understand the financial aid process or don't participate in the financial aid process. So we have to help them understand and get more students that get to the end of the process. The other thing we have to do is find ways to tap into new populations that don't traditionally go to college. So, finding students in Indiana that are well qualified academically, but just for one reason or another aren't thinking about college right now, and find ways to attract those students. And then transfer students is another big part of it. We have to become a more transfer-friendly institution. I know we have class-level senators here. Do we have transfers? Can we transfer? Yeah. We have to find better ways to get those types of agreements and that process. So we have basically a 6-pillar plan to address declining enrollment over the next couple of years. We brought in 600 freshmen this past year for fall 21, and my goal with the board of directors for next year is 730. So we're already looking at about a 22% target, and I'm happy to report that we're up in applications, we're up in admits, and we're on pace to realize those new goals for fall 22. So yeah, great question. Yeah.
What institution did you previously work at?
Okay, so quickly, I started my career at USC, which was my alma mater. Then I worked up in the Bay Area for a little while at 2 Catholic institutions, Notre Dame, Dana Muir, and then Holy Names University. Then I worked at 2 women's colleges after that. One was Mills College up in the Bay Area, and then most recently, I came from Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles. So about 25 years, all private colleges and universities, all California. So this is a little bit of a homecoming for me. I grew up in Illinois, but again, I've lived most of my adult life in California. But yeah, other stuff. How can we help with retention? Let's talk about that for a minute. How do we get a dialogue going? How do we do a regular check-in? Give me some ideas on how we can start a decent feedback loop of conversation between student government and the administration. What's lacking? What's missing? Yeah. Why are all the programs cutting? So that's a question we have to discuss. Okay, so you're talking about specific to your major or?
My program is cutting.
Okay.
We're putting a lot of language programs right now.
Great.
And I know my one friend's in my major, and she really ran out of courses to take, so she transferred.
That's a great question. Okay, so how do we have more conversation around sort of the classes and then the programs that are being canceled? I would say that there's a lot that goes into those decisions. It's very difficult to close programs at the university level, and so when it happens, it's probably a multi-year process, but okay, we need to talk about sort of how do we have more of those discussions. I think sometimes it has to do with, number of majors and sort of there's like a unit load and all this different stuff, but I think better understanding of sort of how that happened. Do you have Provost Johnson come through at some point? Next week. Ask Eric Johnson, Dr. Eric Johnson, that question. He's your guy there. Yeah. Oh, there you go. What else? Okay. Cool. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like a broad conceptual thing, but just meeting students where they're at, I think is very important. I think there's a lot of things where students can actively seek out individuals to share their opinions, but I think a lot of students aren't inclined to do that a lot of times. But I think if other people were to go to those students and ask, like you mentioned that you were doing a lot of the time, I think that's a great way to get honest feedback. Like when you're talking to students downstairs, and in an honest dialogue between students, they're going to be more forthcoming with what they don't necessarily like about the institution.
Sure.
But I think if it's something more where a student has to voluntarily go out and seek an outlet for that, then a lot of it, it kind of turns a lot of people away.
I think that's a really great point. You know, it's interesting. I've noticed something just in my limited time here that this is not a university that speaks up in groups, right? For better or worse. I've been in institutions where if you get more than 5 people in a room, you're going to be there for 2 hours without a feedback loop. I don't know if Valpo's that place, but I also agree with you. I think we need to be more cognizant of not just making ourselves available, but coming to your space. And so I would say, I'm gonna ask Madam President, let's think that through. How do we, you know, not right in this moment, but like, how do we unpack this in a way, right, that allows us not just to come to your space, and I'm sort of, I think sort of using sort of a big we there, I think about the administration, but how do we set up more opportunities for small group or one-on-one discussions? And what does that look like? I'd love feedback on that, because I agree with you. It's asking a student that you're sort of walking around on a tour with, what would you change about this place? First of all, it does take a minute to think that through and feel comfortable. But they're better conversations, right, than necessarily what this format. I wouldn't expect, I mean, feel free if you want to, but I wouldn't expect that this group will all of a sudden start unloading on everything that's like frustrating about Valpo. Maybe it will, but how do we create that space? I think that would be great. Yeah.
I mean, I guess for students of color and other underrepresented students, being transparent and accountable for certain things, like, we want to know why we aren't staying, and like that you're actively pursuing getting us here.
I think that's an outstanding point. I had the opportunity to participate in the forum on We Matter Week. Well, first, I was a bit of a late ad because I don't think anybody knew I was here. Or maybe just didn't want me, or crashed it. I don't know. Anyway, so it was interesting, and I got to have a wonderful opportunity to sit next to Carrie, and we had some good conversations throughout. I was taken as a new person in the room, how much of it was about poor communication, and how much of it was about things that you had posed as a group, the organization had posed at the forum last year. That was not, just wasn't the feedback loop. There were a lot of things I think the university was working on, or there were reasons why they had paused, but we had not, as a university, stopped and thought through how do we respond sort of in either small environments or in sort of more official ways to answer the questions and provide updates. And I think that's important because, again, I think anything that students bring to the university, the administration, again, not always going to be actionable, but it warrants a discussion and warrants consideration and warrants certainly a response as to here's what we can and can't do and here's why. I mentioned this in my remarks at that the forum that we have the luxury frequently that we are here a long time, right? Faculty are here a long time. Staff usually are here a long time. Students have a 2, 3, 4 year life cycle with the university. So if we go a year or a year and a half without responding to an action agenda, that's 25% plus of your entire experience here at Valpo. And I think that's something that I think we have to, as a collective, keep closer to top of mind. Now, I'm speaking for people, when I'm the new guy in the room, but that was my observation that night. So I agree with you. Yeah.
I would also bring up the idea of more informal settings, like you were just talking about meeting Abraham downstairs. Anytime there's a group of students sitting around, we're talking about what's going on at school and how we feel about our classes and what we think of the parking situation. But if we're going to come into a big formal meeting, we're not going to say, oh, hey, I don't really like my parking situation. So if faculty or people like yourself are mingling with us more informally, we're more likely to tell you what's really going on.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you just a flat out question. I won't direct it to I'll just do it. If I'm walking through Founders downstairs and I'm not with anybody and I just want to sit down and have lunch, who's gonna be cool with me sitting down and just having lunch with you? Right? Carrie's laughing because she knows that like you all, because you maybe know who I am, but I would just sit down with the random conversation. What's going on? So So let me say it like this. First of all, standing rule with everybody I work with, and certainly true of the students in our office, and you all to spread the word. Drop me an email, give me a call. I buy lunch. We can sit down and chat forever. You can talk about anything. We can talk about what you want to do for the career, what you think about Valpo, why you're pissed about parking. I understand there's 2 parking lots that are really a challenge, and we got to talk through that. And the good news is, if you're, have your meal plan and you're doing swipes anyway, I've also been known to buy Beacon t-shirts from time to time, so I'm trying to get the gear out into the world, wearing my marketing communications hat. So the other thing is, if you let me sit down and crash your lunch, I may just say, follow me to the bookstore and I'll buy you some gear. Okay, so, and I see some nodding heads because I think a couple of you have been in the bookstore when I've actually done that for students. So I'm just saying, there's a benefit to letting me crash your lunch. No, I think it's a great point. We have to figure out less formal, less stuffy ways to create that feedback. For sure, I'm hearing that loud and clear. We'll hear it in here. Yeah. Oh, Georgia, hi.
You can create a Google form, kind of like for the residential life guys, where they send out a form, just kind of going over everything with residential life. I know that a lot of people fill that out.
Okay.
So if that's something that you could like do like a monthly check-in with us students,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because like I said, we're not gonna tell you in person. We'd rather just fill out a form and be like, we're not happy about this.
Sure.
If that's something that like the university did, I could possibly see it being good for now.
So I think that's a great idea. I think let's explore. I'm always worried about electronic communication because I think it makes it too easy to not close the loop in terms of feedback, and also depending on sort of understanding sort of the regular check-in or review of the document. So I like the idea. Let's think through a little more formally how we can make it a mechanism where the response is being heard, or at least there's an understanding that it's being considered. That may be as easy as like somebody just makes a note that, yeah, we read this, we'll get back to you by this date, or we'll post a note about it by this date. But I think it's an interesting area.
So I'd like to echo what Georgia just said.
Yeah.
I'm actually the chair of the residence committee, so that would be great if we had communication and but I was also thinking, like Senator Howard, Howard just mentioned, sorry, just want to make sure, mentioned, maybe some outreach to, Congress specifically, maybe, I'm not saying, sit at the tables at like founders aren't necessarily.
I was just not invited to lunch. They're saying this and whatever you do not say.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But like coming to like events that we like that are hosted in Milwaukee and things like that, or general body meetings and that kind of thing, just like so that we at least know you guys a little bit more, so rather than just seeing you guys from far away at a football game or something like that.
Yeah, no, I will say that is just something to sort of just talk a little bit about for a second. There are several of us that are so new in our role. So I've been with the institution 5 months. I know Steve Janowiak has been he's been here for a while, but he's been in his position for less than a year. Provost Johnson's been in his position for less than a year. President Padilla has been here for only about 8 months. So we talk about a lot that we need to get to that space where we all sort of get caught up and sort of catch our breath, and we have not done a good job of that. And we talk a lot. Frankly, we had a president's cabinet meeting today where it came up that we have to find a way as a group to be more present in general activities and be around. We have acknowledged that this semester we have not made, sort of realized the goal that we collectively wanted to hit in terms of participation, because we all were, I think, sort of trying to get our heads above water a little bit. It's not an excuse. That's just, again, looking at the life cycle of a student. We lost a semester in terms of that meaningful participation. Also, I will say, specific to OMP, Angela Vidal Rodriguez is absolutely holding us responsible for a lot of this in terms of she is constantly, all right, who's coming to this? Who's out here? They're not seeing us. So there's a lot of conversation around it. We did not do what we had intended this semester for not good reasons, but reasons. But you're right, we need to start, we need to see us more. Yeah.
You just touched on this a little bit actually, and I'm acknowledging that your term hasn't been throughout that whole period, but obviously like the schools have been hit in multiple ways during COVID, when that was most predominant. So one of the areas that I know was affected was kind of faculty and staff hires and how that shifted. Just speaking on retention, but also enrolling students in general. I know a big draw of that is programs, as well as the programs who's teaching them, what kind of strength we have in the faculty and staff. And since that went through a lot of transition and a lot of shifts, I know that affected certain departments like we were talking about earlier, some ones that got closed. So is the university like back to that place? Have we rebounded fully from that, or do we have like a timeline or an estimate of when we might be fully recovered from that, as far as just retention of faculty that were affected by COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really great, both advanced and complex question. So let me unravel a little bit as best I can. I think one of the challenges was that the contraction of programs, the contraction of some faculty and staff occurred in terms of the timing when it did, when we were at a very limited functioning capacity, and most programs and services were online, didn't allow necessarily for us to then see where the holes were going to be in terms of working with and supporting students and offering sort of the full battery of curriculum and all that students had grown accustomed to and you deserve and you need. So I think that's something that's ongoing right now. Let me say that like that. And I think we're looking across the landscape without standing here and saying, oh yeah, we're back to staff position and these faculty. We made a shift as a university. There were some decisions that were made. I can't unfortunately speak with sort of a lot of detail because they happen before my time, other than I do know that, they were made in what was felt was, some needs to overall over time strengthen the university, but short term they caused some challenges and they caused some problems, and there was an impact on students. What we're doing now as we're out of COVID is we're learning a lot about sort of where do we address those shortfalls and where do we find ways to better assist and better serve students. I will tell you that I chair the retention committee, and that's a lot of what we talk about is the whole committee. We meet every other week, and I would say better than half the meeting is addressing exactly the questions that you posed. Okay, this position isn't here anymore. This faculty member has left. This position is open and we're trying to fill it, but what are we doing in the meantime? Those types of discussions. So, it's a very lived, real, true experience for students when a faculty member or a staff member leaves for whatever reason leaves. And we're starting to unpack sort of the impacts of that over time. It was just you couldn't monitor in real time during COVID. I guess I don't really know how else to say it because we just weren't functioning. We weren't here. But no, it is something, again, see, this is where we go back to the feedback loop. It's something that we're literally talking about every other week, but from your lived experience, that doesn't really matter if it's not being addressed. Right? Yeah.
I think hearing concerns is great, but I think it's also good for students to know what you guys are doing to address them, because a lot of the times I get complaints from students telling me as a senator, they don't feel their concerns have been heard. So it's nice to, I think, check in and kind of give an idea of what the university is doing to address those, even if it's something as saying that you're working on it, so that we know where you guys are at, instead of presenting the concern and not hearing back for a long period of time.
Yeah. Let's unpack that for a second. I know I want to be mindful of time because it's late and I know you all have a ton of homework. Abraham told me he's got 3 hours of homework when he's done with popcorn. How do we prioritize? How do we work with this group, right? Because it's one thing to hear student concerns, and it's one thing to sort of have listening sessions, formally, informally, one-on-one groups, where we sort of hear the feedback and hear items that we need to address. What would be helpful for, obviously, just me directly in my role, is to seek student assistance, and if it's this group, great, if it's other entities as well. How do we prioritize? Here's everything we've heard, right? And I'm not asking one group to speak necessarily for every student at the institution, although I appreciate that y'all are elected to do that. But it's about how do we help us prioritize so that when we have the feedback loop, we are discussing and responding to the most pressing issues first, right? Because universities are complex organizations. You're gonna hear a lot about that when you get to grad school. They're loosely coupled complex organizations. And so I can be working on something because 5 students told me this is a huge deal. And I could be trying to move the needle over here. But my colleague, who I haven't checked in with in a month, she could be working on something over here that actually impacts 100 students and is far more important than this issue I'm trying to work on over here with these 5 students. And how are we getting student feedback on how do we prioritize? Not that we're not going to respond to everything, but if there's a great big listening tour, how do we prioritize response, right? And that's, again, where I'd love to sort of have this dialogue ongoing in whatever format we can do. If it's this entity that helps prioritize that for us, great. If it's a series of organizations, we do it that way too. But that's the hard part. Because if we just keep responding to everything, it's going to start to not only feel insincere, but it will be insincere. Like how often can we just say we're working on it, right? I mean, let's go back to the We Matter week for a second. I mean, I walked out of the room and I said, we just told these guys 25 times we're working, right? Like, let's own that. Like, it's not that we're not working on it, but from the student experience, you heard 25 times we're working on it. How about great? You worked on it and it's done. At some point, yeah, we have to be able to prioritize how we get to those items that are most impactful. You have to follow.
Yeah, so you said that, it's a difference between what you're working on versus what your faculty member colleague is working on. Is there any way that you can have an inter-colleague dialogue, like just to kind of check in with your other faculty members and say, here's what I've been hearing, here's what you've been hearing, so that you guys can collaborate on issues that might, like if a lot of you are hearing the same issue, that might signal what's important. Because I know students, like, you can get a bunch of students bringing up the same issue, which shows that it's important, but they might bring it up to different groups of people. So it might be good to check in, like, inter-colleague wise.
Yeah, and that's a great point. No, and there's a lot of organizations to do that. What we're trying to do is figure out how we, sort of those groups that intersect, right? Because, like, as an example, faculty senate, yeah, that's a great point where they sort of talk about larger issues, but there isn't necessarily a feedback loop for them to get together and say, okay, here's also what we're hearing in the classroom about the student experience. So where do we send that? And retention committee, again, 12 people in a room, they're all talking about different things, but then when we leave that group, how does that branch out? So that's a part of it as well, is we have to bridge those gaps to find out. Because I mean, I think anecdotally, when we sit down, we know here are the 5 issues that keep coming up. Like every organization or every committee is talking about these same 5 issues. But the reality is if a semester has gone by before we get the right people in the room to do that, then we miss half a year. So I think that's some of it as well, is we need to figure, like I will say standing here right now, I don't even know who else comes to this group. Like it's great that the provost is coming in a week. I don't know who else ultimately over the course of the semester are your guest speakers that I need to get, in touch with and say, hey, what did you all hear? Because here's what I heard. So let's get together and create a white paper that says, here's what we got to do based on the experience we all just had in front of SGA, right? Like that would be this starting to work, right? You're taking up too much time, and I'll stand here all night. It's your call. Who's our sergeant members? Who's running the show here?
Are there any more questions for Brian?
Okay, Brian.O'Rourke, no apostrophe in my last name, at Valpo. Call me, email me, whatever you'd love to continue this dialogue. And I would love, frankly, to come back like early next semester and talk more and sort of do a check-in and create a space where you all hold me accountable and say, you were standing up here the second week in November and said, let's start doing some stuff. Let's stop saying we're working on it. And let me come back here and say, here's what we've done to start addressing that. Cool. Not that I'm inviting myself back to the party. Awesome. All right. Cool. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right, thank you so much again, Brian. That was a very good discussion. I'm very proud of how that went. And we would love to have Brian back and share that accountability. So, all right, moving on to public comment. Are there any public comments here in the room or on YouTube? All right, moving on to the approval of the agenda. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any disapproval? Any abstentions? All right, moving on to senators' reports. Are there any senators' reports? Senator Friesen?
Hello, everyone. I know I keep talking about this, but it is next week. So Senate is co-hosting the food drive with APO. You should have all gotten a link in the group me from me sometime, I think, over the weekend or last week, and that's to sign up for tabling. So if you are available to table, that would really be appreciated and show Senate support for this event. So please fill out that link. If you have any questions or want to help out, please email me or reach out to me after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Friso. Any other senator supports? Senator Martin?
Okay, so this is an idea that I've had for a while now, but the United Nations Climate Change Conference has been going on for a couple weeks now. And it's something that my business professor and I have been talking about, and I also do research on it. So I would love to host kind of like a little event / meeting after Thanksgiving break for anyone interested on talking about the impact of the COP26, as it's also known, conference in Glasgow, Scotland. I think it's great, especially for our generation and generations to come, to kind of see the impacts that have been made, especially when it comes to our environment and stuff like that. So if you're interested, just please email me at georgia.martin@valpo.edu. Thank you. And I'll try and get my professor to join too.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Are there any other senator reports? All right, seeing none, moving on to advisors' reports. All right, moving on to officers' reports. President Ford. All right, moving on to my report. So we're getting a plan in order for headshots so that we can start getting those out there on our website and on our windows. So I will keep you updated with that. Also with the constituent town hall plan, those plans are in progress for those two. We want to make sure that we have everything put together for these. So most likely they will start taking place next semester, just because we don't want to kind of string things together to get it out this semester. So if you guys have any ideas on how we can best do constituent town halls for next semester, that would be great. But plans are in the works for those. Lastly, we got holiday decorations for the office today, so we're really excited for that. And the advisors are very confident that they would win the door decorating contest for the union. So we have an idea, and I think it's pretty good. So if you guys want to help out with that, let us know. We still have to wait on the details for the door decorating contest, but we're gonna win. So also, what was that?
You're a big talker.
Yeah. New kids on the block.
I love it.
Also, holiday party. So we were thinking about putting together a holiday party right after our General Assembly on December 6th. We're thinking about doing this as a potluck. We'll get the Parkhurst waiver and everything. So if you guys want to bring in desserts or snacks or anything, that would be great. And we can also talk about potentially doing a white elephant game, but we can talk more about that at a later time. But yeah, also, today is President Ford's birthday, so if you all want to join me in singing happy birthday, that would be great. All right. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Joey Ford. Happy birthday to you.
All right, now that she's embarrassed, we can move on. One last thing, Provost Johnson is coming to next week's meeting, so if you guys want to have some questions prepared for him as well. And tonight went really well. Thank you guys so much for being courteous and asking really great questions. I hope the same for next week. All right, moving on to Secretary Shouse. Public Relations Coordinator Corinthy does not have anything, so moving on to Executive Treasurer Lorenz.
No report.
All right, moving on to committee reports. Executive Committee, President Ford.
All right, so this past Saturday, the executive committee was able to meet and discuss what our ideas and thoughts were for the future of Senate. It was really productive, and we were able to start coming up with some different ideas on structure and just big picture ideas for how we want Senate to look like in the next few years. So we'll be in the process of putting together a more formal plan, and eventually we will bring that to you guys. But right now, we're still very much in the ideas area. So it was really great meeting though, and we were able to make a lot of progress. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, President Ford. Moving on to Finance Committee, Chair Priso.
All right, everyone, just to remind you of our timeline, the Finance Committee will be presenting Tier 3 budgets next week, and that will be the opportunity for you guys to get your first look at them and see what the Finance Committee has made as far as allocation decisions, and then we will vote, not the next week because that's Thanksgiving break, but the week after that. I do ask that you make sure to look over the slate once it's sent out and come prepared with motions for when we vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Priso. Moving on to Administration Committee Chair Chenoweth.
Hello, everyone. We do have another new student organization to vote on today, and that is VU Students for Life. And the committee had a great meeting earlier tonight with VU Students for Life, and we wound up voting to bring them here for you guys to vote on 500. So VU Students for Life is a student organization that exists to support and promote reverence for equal protection in the lives of all human beings, especially the unborn, the aged, the ill and infirm, and the mentally and physically disabled. They aim to provide a place for people who want to feel heard and to have discussions from both sides of viewpoints on different issues, and they want to have open conversations and engage and display a willingness to learn. They want to educate people fully and provide knowledge while having those dialogues, and they want to start out with monthly call-out meetings to gauge interest and just get people involved as they resume operations. This is a group that, like some of the other ones that we voted on this semester, used to be recognized and then eventually kind of dissolved over time, and then is now trying to restart. Interest right now is at about 30 students, but they think there will be more once they get started operationally. And yeah, are there any questions for me about the Students for Life? Yeah.
Before the admission, do they go to the America and talk to people there, or and is this an outside organization partner?
As far as I'm aware of, they didn't mention anything in these about specifically Planned Parenthood having dialogues there. And they are affiliated with Students for Life of America, that is their parent organization. But as pertaining to our bylaws, they don't receive any funding from that organization, or and after they are recognized, they'll no longer be able to receive any support that requires financial resources from that from that parent organization. That didn't seem to pose any problems to them as we talked about.
If there are any other questions, I suggest a motion to discuss. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, floor is open.
Is this the group that tabled helping student organization?
That is correct, yeah. So what happened with that is, since they were previously recognized, they had an account in EMS that had never got fully deleted or deactivated. They just didn't have access to it anymore. So they went into the union and asked a student employee if they could reserve a table. The student employee saw that they had an account, so assumed that it would be okay to reserve that table. They got the table reserved, they tabled, and then after the fact, we went back and we also discovered a bunch of other inactive organizations in the system that got cleared out. So we were able to solve that problem so that it doesn't happen anymore. But it was just a circumstance of, they didn't know that they weren't supposed to be tabling, and they had got the approval from the union. So there was nothing, no like malicious intent or anything. It was just an honest mistake.
If there are no other point of inquiries, I suggest a motion to vote.
Motion. Can you read again about this organization, because there's something that I want to add that you had mentioned.
So them being an organization to support and promote reverence for equal protection of the lives of all human beings, especially the unborn, the aged, the old, and infirm, the mentally and physically disabled. Is that what you mentioned? Yeah.
So, I guess that's where I have just a little bit of a question because I just see this on social media. I just seen like a person speaker from the organization outside of the Indiana regional prison. And then, she was explaining on a story about someone coming up and telling her that she was the idea of not fully. And then she was like, full. So is this an organization that's going to connect people? I don't know most organizations that try to kind of change the name of it.
This is just, they're an organization that wants to have open dialogues with people on campus. I mean, it's not like they're trying to actively go out and change the way that people think and change the opinions of people like aggressively or anything. They just want to be able to talk to people about these issues in a respectful manner. And if at any point any student organization violates any university policy or anything like that, yes, Student Senate does have the authority to revoke recognition if we thought that was appropriate in the future.
Do we know why they dissolved previously?
No, we do not. And as far as I know, the current people involved in the organization also don't know. I mean, it was a while ago. It was around 2018 that they dissolved.
Are there any other points of inquiry?
Are there any other, like, known associates of the organization?
No, just Students for Life, as far as I know.
I guess is there any like opposition for this club or last semester or last year when the American Freedom was coming together? The petition was created.
As far as I'm aware, I mean, I'm sure you guys are all in touch with your specific constituencies more than I likely am. I haven't heard very much about this organization. I know when they did table, even though they technically weren't supposed to, I've heard that they were having group discussions with individuals of all different opinions on the matter. So yeah, I think the response to their activities so far has been largely positive or neutral, I would say.
I guess I was just a little confused on, you would say you believe they like dissolved in like around 2018 or something, so pretty much before most people's time here in this group of university. So I'm just wondering between that period and now, what kind of things have they been operating and like are they under the national affiliate or are they under the schools? Because you just said that the program hasn't existed since 2018, so like how have they been having these dialogues with people and tabling at the union if they didn't have a formal recognition in any sense at that point?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Right now they exist solely under their national organization. They're affiliated, but they're operating as an independent student group. Under that, they're not recognized, but as we all know, you don't have to be Senate recognized to exist just as a group of people for any purpose at the university. And really, they've just been, as far as I'm aware, they've just been getting started this year, this semester, in trying to gauge interest through just word of mouth. And again, tabling at the university was not something that was supposed to happen, but it was just an honest mistake on their part. And it exposed kind of an error in what was going on with the union's EMS system that has since been resolved. But so yeah, it's the group dissolved in 2018, but it's, you know, a pretty well-known group around, so just trying to get things restarted this semester. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I was just clarifying that they weren't operating under like developments.
No, they haven't been.
So a couple people mentioned asking questions about the dissolution a couple years ago. I'm just wondering, is this dissolution any different than what happened with the Democrats Club that we voted on a few weeks ago?
No,
Is
no.
it basically the same kind of situation?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. It's just like either interest waned out or something happened. They just didn't feel like they needed to be Senate recognized after that anymore. But yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
There's a motion to vote. All in favor of voting, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? All right. So, all in favor of approving VU Students for Life recognition, please raise your placards. All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, one person did not vote, so we are moving back into voting procedures. So, all in favor of recognizing VU Students for Life, please raise your placards. All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, VU Students for Life passes 20. All right, VU Students for Life passes 21-0. One more time. All right, moving into voting procedures one more time. Okay, all in favor of recognizing VU Students for Life, please raise your placards. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. VU Students for Life is passed 21-0-0. That's it for the report. Okay. Moving on to Committee on Media and Chair Behrens.
The Committee on Media will be meeting next Thursday and report.
Thank you, Senator Behrens. Moving on to Screening Committee, Senator Bakri is not here today, so moving on to Committee on Residence, Chair Abraham. Moving on to Dining Services, Chair Dellison.
Hi everyone, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Diane Dallison, and I'll be taking over the position of the dining chair. So if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me and report.
Thank you, Senator Dallison. Moving on to Diversity and Inclusion, Chair Howard.
The committee meeting is this Wednesday.
Thank you, Senator Howard. Moving on to Discretionary Funds, Chair Rob.
Okay, yesterday, Sunday, DFC met, we looked over the 11 applications we received. 5 of them are moving on to interviews. We will meet with each of the applicants, ask them questions, and have a final decision hopefully by next General Assembly meeting so we can start getting these applications approved and funded. Any questions?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
I can ask next one.
Anything else? Okay, and report.
Thank you, Senator Rob. There is no new business and there is no old business, so moving on to public comments. Are there any public comments here in the room or on YouTube? All right, moving on to postmortem. Thank you all for being so courteous to Brian O'Rourke today. Like I said before, that was a great discussion, and I hope that you bring that to next meeting with Provost Johnson. And also remember that constituent reports are due November 29th, so just be mindful of that. All right, moving into adjournment. Is there a second? All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, I hereby adjourn this meeting at 9:26 p.m. Thank you all.